So iteration. So part of this is reviewing loops. We often use for loops, but while loops also exist, so we're going to review that. And then we also talk about some arrays and some interesting things you can do with them in the context of strings, because strings are just arrays of characters. A big idea you'll need if you ever code in like Java or C++. They work that way. So up there you have a while loop. It's in a function. Def countdown. And so it counts down, it starts at n, goes down to 1. It doesn't get quite to 0, because when it gets there, it blasts off. Yes? So some review on how while loops work. There's your 3 steps. Yeah, nothing spectacular. And we call this a loop because 1 and 3 are connected to one another until the step 2 is met. That's like your exit condition or terminating condition. So immediately, there's a practice quiz question. When does this thing stop? Right, so you're looking, right, at a very specific spot. So that's very good. It stops when n is, wait, is that when it stops though? Or keeps going?
Well, n is not equal to 1.
Right, so when does it stop?
When n is equal to 1.
There we go. Right. When n is equal to 1, it stops. When n is not equal to 1, it keeps going. Yep. So then you think about, if you put in sequence 3, an input of 3, what gets produced? And you got some weird stuff happening. Okay.
How about we get rid of the rest of it and we'll just print
N. But then you'll have infinite loop.
What is this trying to accomplish?
So if you called this, like given this function definition, and you typed in the computer sequence 3, what will you see? What's going to get printed to the screen?
3. 3.
Just 3?
3 and then 3 and then 3 and then 3. 3. 3 modulus 2. If 3 modulus 2 is equal to 0, that's not true.
Yeah.
Then it doesn't do that. And then else, and then 3 equals 3 times 3. That's 9.
Okay.
10.
Yes. You can see some students are really thinking about it hard because as you're updating, right, it's not always n equals n plus 1. You could do other things here. And this one kind of has you dividing, growing bigger. So the order is kind of weird. So there's the answer. You can look over that in your own time. But it's much longer than you would have expected at first. 3 is the first input. And then you can work through it on your own time on why that thing is the way it is. Okay, and it's because of this weird updating step. So my mouse is going to go there. This step, it's not very conventional. Neither is this one. Okay?
So you're saying code bad?
Well, not necessarily bad. It's just highlighting some things that I want you to notice about a while loop. Because before, we either like march forward or march back. But there are other things you can do. You can skip around. In this example, it's very useful for like your game of sticks assignment. You keep playing your game until it's game over. Right? So you kind of want the infinite loop for a while until a certain condition is met. Just like in this short example here, it's going to keep repeating, and you type in something, and the computer repeats it back to you until you very specifically write lowercase d-o-n-e. And in that case, you exit your loop. So here's a useful keyword, break. So then whenever you want to exit early, or you know you want to stop, there's break. I think exit also terminates your program and stops it from running. Yeah.
Okay.
But there's a subtle difference. Break exits a if statement or a loop, but exit, like your whole program will stop. So it'll just.
So if I were to put
yes.
break inside an if statement,
Yes.
it would not do that if statement, but
Correct.
it would continue with the rest of the
Yeah,
code.
if there's other code afterwards, it will go there, right? But exit will just stop your function. It will just stop your program.
That's funny. I should make something funny with that.
So, more on that. So, a useful example with loops. So, look at this thing, right? Fruit. Give it your favorite fruit. These next couple slides reviews examples of arrays, also known as strings, because strings are just characters or letters put together. So that's why like this topic's kind of lumped into iteration. So this thing, right? Fancy computer science word, traversal. That's the marching pattern. You go through each element, you print it out. So you do it character by character. You had banana as your word, or Beanos. and then you spell it out one line at a time. And that's how you would do so. Yes? Just like from last semester, you have your starting point, you have when you stop or when you continue, and you have some way of updating. And then here's the interesting parts, right? You print out one letter at a time.
So is it traversal when you print a letter out one at a time?
Yeah. Well, traversal is just moving through a given list. You're processing the list. Often it's like either one at a time, moving backwards, moving forwards.
So if I
That's
were to do
yeah.
anything with a list, it's called a traversal.
Traversal. You walk through your list. You process each element. You check. That's like all your coding bad problems, pretty much. They're traversal problems. That's like a category. And then you can do so very shortly in for loop form. So in Python, I kind of hinted at you with turtle right off the bat. You like for loops. It's just 2 lines versus like these bunch of lines, right? And because you've programmed before, we can hide some of that information. But as beginners, like in computer programming A, I stuck with while loops because I wanted you to think about these 3 parts: start, stop, and how you update, to make them explicit. But then here, if you're a newbie, you're like, oh, how does this work? It hides a lot of that, which I don't like for beginners. I need you to know the pieces. So in the very beginning, when we talked about strings, this is something that's neat. I think Java can do this too with like subarrays or something like that, array lists, the data structure. But in Python, it's built in. So you can get parts of arrays. And that action is called slicing. So do you remember the colon? That's where años came up. Yeah, so the colon operator may save you some time in some of your coding back problems if you want like parts or like every 2 numbers, for example, and do list and list comparison. So there's a reminder on that. This is interesting. 3 to 3 gives you nothing because it excludes the next one. Okay. So there's another practice quiz question. Think about it on your own time. What does it do? Describe it in English, because the code already tells me one way of doing it.
Index 0, that means there's no HTML file.
I see. There's no HTML file.
No, and you have to name it index.
So maybe we'll walk through an example, right? So when I went to my training, they called it code tracing. So that's like pretending you're the computer and thinking about the steps of what the computer would do. So up here on the board, I'm writing the word is going to be Vinos. And let's see what happens when we give it the letter A. Okay, so this is your word. Your letter is A. So as we walk through the code, index is 0, so you start here. While index is less than the length, that's the length is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 0 is less than 6, yep. So we go to our if statement, we check, is B equal to the letter A? Nope.
Wait, explain that statement again.
Yes. So word square bracket index, we're right here. Word right now is the word Vinos, right?
Right.
By using the square brackets, my index value right now, so maybe I'll write it up here, index, right now is 0.
Okay.
So we're checking the very first letter. We're accessing the 0th position of the array or the list called word.
Okay.
And that, right now, for the word Vinos, is B.
Okay.
So this is going to give us the letter B. And then we're going to compare. Is that equal to letter, which has the value A? So far, no. So then we don't return.
Yes.
We update our index, which was 0, but now it's 1.
All right.
And based on the indentation, we go back and check.
Oh.
So now we're up here again. Now is word 1, which is E, equal to A? Nope. So we don't return, we repeat. Update the index. 2. What is words 2?
A.
Yep. Is A equal to A?
I think so.
Yep. So this is when we return. Our find function gives us the number 2.
Why does it say return negative 1?
So let's go through that example. We'll keep going, okay? Pretend we're still checking for A, but now there's Z, right? Are there any letter Z's here?
No.
Nope. So imagine in your loop, you keep repeating, I check B-E-A-N-O-S, Beanos, right? And now at the very end, I didn't find any Z's. So what does the program do? The loop has stopped.
It starts at the beginning of the word again?
No. It just tells you -1 means that this letter is not in your given array.
How does it know that?
Because once you've processed every single letter, there was no match.
Okay.
You still have to return a number. And this find function tells you -1,
Alright.
which means it's not here. Make sense? So that's the kind of thought process. Formally, I didn't know it was called code tracing. We'll do it a lot in AP Java when you take it with me next semester. Okay?
Next semester.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, in the fall. So if you give it B, it gives it 0. If you give it S, it gives you position 5. If you give it E, it gives you 1. If you give it O, it gives you 4. So in a nutshell, there's the answer. It's the opposite of using the square brackets. It tells you where the letter is. That's why it was called find. It's like find position. Yes? There's a take-home quiz. So you will, I'm going to assign it to you at the beginning of the block. Then I'll check it sometime Monday.
Monday?
If we finish early, we leave.
Yes! If you finish your take-home test or decide to actually take it home and do it, by all means, leave early. Yeah, it's great. I love take-home tests. It's a pain for me to grade, though, because then I have to click through them all and I have to check, right? Pen and paper is a lot easier to grade. What?
Just give us 100.
100 out of 4 is too many points. Alright, so other patterns you should be used to. The one that mirrors traversal is counting, right? You don't always have to increment, like in this case, it just counts the number of A's. So like some of your coding map problems, if it wants to know how many occurrences of something, right? You imagine having a giant data set and you're looking for specific things, right? It builds on the traversing pattern, and now you're using a variable to keep track of that. And I think that's almost as far as I got. So in Python, arrays are known as lists. Notice down here are a couple of examples. You can have numbers, you can have letters. And the weird thing in Python is you can have really mixed types. So notice here you have a word, here you have a decimal, there you have a number, and then you have a list inside a list. And it's this second idea that I will be lecturing more about tomorrow, and then giving you your quiz so you can finish your assignments. But it's going to be some true and false, some multiple choice. You'll do it all on your Google Doc, and that's your take-home test. I'll try to make it short.
Wait, so you're saying there's a quiz tomorrow?
Yes, but it's take-home. Open everything.
So I don't have to necessarily come.
I still got to mark you here. So you should check in. Alright, so that's the end of the lecture, Computer Programming B. Work on your assignments. I'll demo and give you significant hints tomorrow on the second part of